A 3-day undercover investigation started with a half-eaten cookie when Malik Thorne walked into his Seattle flagship shop, Apex Roast Company. In plain clothes, he only wanted to check the service quality. But he faced absolute humiliation when the cashier, Chloe Jenkins, threw his change onto the floor. As he picked up the coins and bit his chocolate cookie, Malik froze at a cruel whisper. These single black dads only bring trouble. To save his 12-year-old coffee chain from family favoritism and racism, the CEO decided to work undercover as a trainee. Facing stolen drink recipes and unfair tips, can Malik expose everything, or will his own outdated system sweep him away? Right after that whisper, Malik did not yell. He did not argue. He picked up $3.15 from the cold marble floor. He walked out under Chloe's smug little smile. His black SUV sat 1 block down the street. Malik climbed in and shut the door softly. He looked in the rearview mirror. His jaw felt tight, like a fist made of muscle. In the back seat, his daughter Ruby slept. She was 6 years old. She hugged a worn cloth doll with one button eye missing. Malik watched her chest rise and fall. His own heart still pounded hard behind his ribs. 12 years ago, he had nothing but a dream and 2 empty hands. He remembered knocking on doors in the rain, asking strangers for money to open one small coffee cart. Now he owned 28 shops across 3 states. Nobody in that shop knew who he really was. He touched his thick beard in the mirror. A small detail nagged at him. Chloe's green apron had a tiny gold pin shaped like a 4-leaf clover. He had seen that same pin on 2 other employees last month. It was not part of the uniform. It looked like a secret badge for people who thought they owned the place. The smell of wet asphalt drifted through the cracked window. Somewhere down the block, a delivery truck's brakes hissed and squealed. Malik barely noticed either sound. His mind kept circling back to the marble floor, cold under his palm. He remembered the exact weight of those dimes and quarters. $3.15, scattered like an insult. 12 years ago, he slept in a rented room above a laundromat. The dryers thumped through the thin floor every single night. He counted coins from a coffee cart just to make rent. Nobody handed him anything back then. He built Apex Roast Company 1 cup at a time, 1 door at a time. Now his name sat on 28 leases across 3 states. He glanced again at Ruby in the mirror. Her small fingers stayed curled around the doll's frayed arm. That doll once belonged to her mother, gone 3 years now. Malik made a quiet promise to himself in that moment. Whatever rot was growing inside his stores, he would cut it out. Ruby would never grow up believing cruelty wins. Malik started the engine and drove home in silence. But his mind stayed locked on that gold pin and on the words Chloe had whispered like poison. That afternoon, his assistant Sarah knocked on his office door with a thick folder. She looked pale under the office lights. The numbers inside were worse than Malik expected. The Capitol Hill flagship store made record profit this quarter, but employee turnover had hit 40% in just 2 months. Something was rotting under the shiny counters. Sarah told him about anonymous letters sent to the company suggestion box. Every single one complained about unfair treatment. Every single one had been quietly blocked by a regional manager. Malik felt his stomach twist. It was 10:47 in the morning when he read the last letter. This was not one rude cashier having a bad day. This felt like a sickness spreading through the store he built with his own hands. He built Apex Roast Company on one simple promise. Every person deserves a warm cup and real respect. Sarah placed one more sheet on his desk, her hand trembling slightly. It listed 7 employee complaints filed over 91 days. Every complaint mentioned the same name over and over. Chloe Jenkins, written in small, tired handwriting. Always ignored, always buried, always erased. Regional says these are just personality conflicts, Sarah said quietly. Her voice carried no confidence in that explanation at all. Malik read each complaint twice, his jaw tightening with every line. One barista wrote about missing tips for 11 straight shifts. Another described being mocked for a thick accent during rush hour. A third simply wrote, "Nobody listens here anymore," and quit the same week. He closed the folder and stood up from his leather chair. Sarah's eyes went wide with worry. She knew that look on her boss's face. "You're not seriously thinking about going in there yourself," she said. Malik did not answer right away. He walked to the window and looked down at the wet street. Sarah reminded him about next week's shareholder meeting. The board would decide on a $5 million expansion into new states. His absence now would look reckless to nervous investors. Malik understood the risk. If any regional manager recognized him undercover, the whole plan would collapse instantly. Worse, he would need to leave Ruby with a babysitter for 3 full days. That thought alone made his chest ache. He glanced at a half-eaten chocolate cookie sitting on his desk. Ruby had taken one bite that morning and made a face. "It tastes bitter, Daddy," she had said, pushing it away. Malik stared at that cookie for a long moment. Something in his own shop had gone cold and wrong. He wondered if he was overreacting to one rude cashier. Maybe this was just a small problem, easy to fix from his office. But the 7 buried complaints said otherwise, loud and clear. Rain tapped against his office window in a slow, steady rhythm. Malik watched it slide down the glass in thin silver lines. Somewhere out there, his own employees felt unseen and unheard. He picked up his phone and made one call. Not to his lawyer. Not to his board. He called an old friend from the very beginning of his journey. Marcus lived in a small house near Pike Place, 29 minutes from downtown Seattle. He was 65 years old, a retired barista who once taught Malik how to roast his very first batch of beans. The porch light flickered when Malik knocked 3 slow taps on old wood. Marcus opened the door in a faded flannel shirt, smiling like no time had passed. His living room smelled of cedar and old paper. Marcus made espresso in an old machine from the 90s. The room smelled like burnt sugar and wet wood. He listened while Malik explained everything, his voice low and tight. The old machine hissed and sputtered between sentences, filling the quiet gaps. Marcus nodded slowly, his weathered hands wrapped around his own warm cup. He had heard stories like this one before, decades ago. "You built something real, Malik," Marcus finally said. He set down 2 small white cups. Steam curled up between them like a ghost. "But you have been standing on the top floor too long. You want to see the cracks in the foundation? Go down into the basement." Marcus reached under his chair and pulled out a small box. Inside sat a pair of thick black glasses and a worn-wool cap. "Take off that expensive coat," Marcus said quietly. "Remember why you started this whole thing." Malik held the glasses in his hand. They felt heavy, like a decision he could not take back. He thanked Marcus and drove home through the dark streets. He had no idea, yet how deep the rot really went inside his own flagship store. He had no idea a stolen recipe and stolen tips waited for him there. 3 days would change everything he thought he knew. At 5:30 the next morning, rain fell cold and steady over Seattle. Malik Thorne disappeared completely. In his place stood a stranger named Damon Rivers. Damon had a rough beard, uncombed and wild. He wore a faded denim jacket and cracked leather boots. In his hand, he carried fake transfer papers from a small store in Idaho. Rain soaked through his collar as he crossed the empty parking lot. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting pale yellow puddles on wet asphalt. His boots squeaked against the concrete with every step. A delivery truck idled nearby, its engine rattling in the cold morning air. Damon pulled his collar higher and kept his head low. Nobody here would recognize the man who signed their paychecks. He walked through the back door of the Capitol Hill shop. No one bowed their head to greet a CEO this time. Only a cold kitchen and suspicious eyes waited for him. Steam from the dishwasher fogged the small window near the sink. The smell of old coffee grounds hung heavy and stale in the air. A refrigerator hummed loudly in the corner, its motor tired and worn. The morning shift crew barely looked up from their stations. Damon had officially entered Chloe Jenkins's private kingdom, and she ruled it like a queen. Chloe spotted him within seconds and curled her lip. She handed him the worst jobs without a single word of welcome. Scrub the clogged bathroom, she ordered, then dumped the old coffee grounds bin. And carry those 50-pound sacks in from the truck, she added, checking her nails. She used sharp little comments about slow old men the whole time he worked. The bathroom smelled sharp, with bleach and something worse underneath. Damon scrubbed the tile grout until his knuckles turned raw and pink. Cold water dripped steadily from a leaky pipe above his head. Damon said nothing. He carried the sacks. His shoulders burned, but his face stayed calm and quiet. Each sack pressed hard against his spine, rough burlap scraping his forearms. Sweat rolled down his neck despite the cold morning air outside. He set every bag down exactly where Chloe pointed without complaint. "Careful, old man," she called out, laughing with another cashier nearby. "We don't need you throwing your back out on us." Her friend giggled behind one hand, glancing sideways at Damon. Around noon, a young woman named Aaliyah Mercer came to stand beside him. She was 28, with tired eyes that still held warmth. She noticed him struggling with the industrial grinder. Without saying much, Aaliyah adjusted the settings for him. She kept her voice low, so Chloe would not notice. During their short 10-minute break, she handed him half of her cold chicken sandwich. They sat on overturned milk crates near the back door. Cold air slipped through a gap under the door frame. Aaliyah unwrapped the sandwich slowly, tearing it into 2 uneven pieces. "You get used to her," Aaliyah whispered, nodding toward Chloe. "Just keep your head down." Damon studied her face and wondered what story lived behind those tired eyes. Her hands looked rough, small burn marks scattered across her knuckles. She had worked the espresso machine for 3 long years straight. Damon noticed she never once complained about any of it. At 2:15 that afternoon, a man in a shiny gray suit walked through the front door. This was Quinn Fletcher, Regional Operations Director, and Chloe's own uncle. His shoes clicked hard against the marble floor, sharp and deliberate. A heavy cologne trailed behind him, thick and sweet like burnt caramel. He scanned the store like a king inspecting his land. Quinn shouted at another young trainee for spilling a small cup of milk. Chloe stood beside him, smiling, suggesting they cut the boys' tips as punishment. Damon gripped the edge of the counter under the register. The boy's hand shook as he mopped up the small white puddle. Quinn's voice boomed through the store, bouncing off the concrete walls. Customers near the window shifted uncomfortably in their seats. His knuckles turned pale white from the pressure. He forced himself to stay silent, to keep playing the role of a quiet, obedient new hire. But something inside him was starting to burn. A vein pulsed once at his temple, quick and sharp. He counted his own breaths, slow and even, until the anger passed. Not yet, he told himself. Not yet. Later that same day, an elderly customer dropped her cane while reaching for her wallet. Chloe rolled her eyes and stepped around the woman without helping. Damon rushed over and picked up the cane himself. "Thank you, young man," the woman said, smiling warmly at him. Chloe watched the exchange with a bored, irritated expression on her face. She muttered something about slow customers under her breath. Damon helped the woman to a nearby table and carried her drink over. Aaliyah caught his eye from behind the counter and gave a small nod. Small moments like this kept him steady through the long shift. By the second night, Damon volunteered to help Aaliyah close the store alone. He wanted to understand how the whole operation really worked behind closed doors. What he found made his blood run cold. The tip jar of the counter stayed full every single day. Customers were generous, dropping bills and coins constantly through each shift. Yet at the end of the night, Chloe gave each barista only $12. The store had gone quiet by then, chairs stacked upside down on tables. A single overhead light buzzed above the register, humming faintly in the silence. Damon watched Chloe count the drawer with practiced, careless speed. Damon calculated quietly in his head while wiping down the counter. The real tips collected that day looked closer to $400. Someone was stealing directly from tired, hard-working people. He thought about the 7 buried complaints sitting in Sarah's folder. Now he understood exactly what those tired handwritten words meant. This was not personality conflict. This was theft, plain and simple. Later that night, near 9:30, Damon heard low voices from the back office. He stopped near the door, pretending to sweep the floor slowly. Chloe was going through Aaliyah's locker. The office door sat open just a crack, yellow light spilling onto the floor. Damon leaned his broom against the wall and stood very still. His own breathing sounded loud inside his ears. Down the hall, an old clock ticked steadily on the break room wall. The sound felt louder than usual in the empty, silent building. Every second seemed to stretch on forever. She pulled out a small blue notebook, its spine worn soft from years of use. Damon's chest tightened. That notebook held Aaliyah's secret recipe for her smoked vanilla macchiato. The pages inside were soft and curled from months of handling. Aaliyah had spent 3 years perfecting that exact blend of vanilla and smoke. Damon had tasted it once, months ago, without knowing its price. With this recipe, Chloe whispered to Quinn, giggling softly, "Your promotion to head office is basically guaranteed." Quinn chuckled and told her to make sure Aaliyah quit on her own soon. "She's too scared to fight back anyway," Chloe added, flipping through another page. "Give her 2 weeks. She'll quit before anyone even asks a question." Quinn nodded, sliding the notebook into his briefcase. Damon stood frozen behind the door, his pulse hammering in his throat. He now understood the full shape of the rot inside his own company. But he needed real proof, not just whispers in the dark. He slipped away quietly before either of them noticed him standing there. His hand shook slightly as he gripped the broom handle again. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would need actual evidence. The next morning, Thursday, Aaliyah searched frantically through her bag and locker. Her notebook was gone. She sat down on a milk crate and cried quietly, afraid to speak up. Her shoulders shook as she pressed both hands over her face. 3 years of quiet work gone in a single night. Damon watched her from across the room, his stomach twisting hard. Damon walked into the break room and saw Chloe on her phone. She was photographing each page of Aaliyah's stolen notebook, page by careful page. He stepped forward and asked her to give it back. Chloe did not flinch. Instead, a slow, wicked smile spread across her face. Something about her calm confidence made Damon's stomach drop with sudden dread. Within seconds, Chloe grabbed a stack of cash from behind the counter. It was $120 from the store's small safe. She slipped it quickly into Damon's old backpack hanging by the lockers. Then she screamed that Damon had stolen money from the register. Quinn appeared almost instantly, with 2 large security guards behind him. They demanded a search through Damon's worn backpack right there. Customers near the window turned to stare, coffee cups frozen halfway to their lips. The cash spilled out onto the counter in front of everyone. Quinn's face twisted with ugly satisfaction as he pointed at Damon. "Typical," he sneered, loud enough for the whole store to hear. "Poor single black fathers like you only know how to steal." The words hit like a slap across the whole room. Aaliyah opened her mouth to defend him, tears filling her eyes. Quinn spun toward her instantly, his voice dropping to a low threat. He warned her that speaking up would end her career in Seattle forever. Aaliyah closed her mouth, shaking, and said nothing more. 2 guards pulled Damon's arms behind his back. Cold metal cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. He walked toward the back door in complete silence. The metal felt icy against his skin, biting into old scars from years of hard work. Every customer in the store watched him walk past, silent and staring. Nobody said a single word in his defense. But as they pushed him past the counter, he looked straight at Chloe and Quinn. His eyes were calm, almost cold, like a man who already knew how this story would end. Rain hit his face the moment the back door swung open. He did not flinch. Somewhere behind his ribs, a quiet fire had finally caught. That evening, Malik sat back in his black SUV outside the police station. One quick call to his personal lawyer had cleared everything within 5 short minutes. No charges, no record, no problem at all. Streetlights blurred through the rain-streaked windshield in soft orange smears. Malik sat for a long moment, letting his shoulders finally drop. 3 days of silence were finally about to end. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small hidden device. For 3 full days, a tiny camera disguised as a denim button had recorded everything from his chest. The footage showed Chloe slipping cash into his backpack with her own hands. It captured her stealing the notebook and her whispered conversation about the stolen recipe. Every ugly secret now sat safely on this tiny drive. Sarah had also secretly pulled financial records from the store's internal payment system. The numbers were exact, cold, and undeniable. Chloe had stolen $4,217.83 in tips. Every missing dollar traced back through 91 days of shift reports. Sarah had cross-checked each entry twice, refusing to leave any room for doubt. The evidence sat printed neatly across 11 clean pages. Malik finally had everything he needed to clean out the rot in his company. He drove home, through quiet streets, gripping the small device tightly in his hand. Tomorrow, everything would change forever. He thought about every barista who ever wrote one of those buried letters. Tomorrow, their words would finally reach the people who should have listened. Nobody would ever silence them again. That night, back in his office at Apex Tower, Malik stood by a huge window. The city glittered below him like scattered gold coins. Sarah walked in with more bad news waiting. Her heels clicked fast across the marble floor, urgent and quick. She held a single printed page, her hand trembling slightly around the edges. Malik turned from the window, already reading her face. Quinn Fletcher had just filed an official patent claim for the smoked vanilla macchiato recipe. He planned to present it as his own creation at tomorrow's board meeting. A $25,000 bonus waited for him if it passed. Malik felt the weight of an impossible choice pressing on his chest. Expose everything in front of nervous investors, and stock prices might drop overnight. The $5 million expansion deal could collapse completely. Stay silent for now, and Aaliyah's stolen work would reward a lying thief instead. Malik thought of Ruby's small face, disappointed by a bitter cookie. Some things could never be worth trading away. Human dignity was not something you could put a price tag on. Malik made his decision standing right there by the window. Tomorrow, he would tell the whole ugly truth. Friday morning arrived bright and sharp over Seattle. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of the VIP boardroom at Apex Tower. Investors and board members filled every seat around the polished table. Coffee cups sat untouched in front of most board members, steam curling upward. Someone's pen tapped softly against a leather folder somewhere near the back. The air smelled faintly of fresh paper and cologne. Quinn Fletcher stood confidently at the podium, showing off slides about his new drink. Chloe sat proudly in the front row of guest seats. Her designer dress looked expensive. Her smile looked untouchable. Just as Quinn finished his final sentence, the heavy wooden door swung open. Malik Thorne walked in, no longer wearing a rough denim jacket. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, sharp and commanding. Quinn's face drained of color the moment he recognized those familiar eyes. Chloe's smug smile froze halfway, then slowly crumbled into confusion and fear. The whole room fell into total silence. Only the quiet hum of the air conditioner filled the space around them. A board member near the window sat perfectly still, coffee cup halfway to her lips. Nobody dared move or speak. Malik walked to the front, without rushing, without raising his voice. He plugged a small drive into the projector himself. The screen lit up with sharp, undeniable footage from his hidden camera. Everyone watched Chloe slip cash into a backpack with her own hands. They heard her confess to stealing Aaliyah's secret notebook. Financial charts appeared next, showing the exact stolen number in bright red text. $4,217.83, taken directly from hardworking employees. Gasps and angry murmurs spread across the boardroom instantly. Quinn's knees buckled, and he dropped down, begging for mercy from aboard. Chloe stood frozen, her mouth open, no words coming out at all. Malik's voice stayed calm, steady, and cold as steel. "You are both terminated, effective immediately," he said simply. "This evidence goes straight to the police." Security quietly escorted both of them out through the same back door Damon once used. That afternoon, Malik returned to the Capitol Hill store, still in his sharp black suit. This time, he walked through the front door, not the back one. Every single employee stood and clapped as he entered. He walked straight to Aaliyah, who still looked stunned by the morning's shocking news. In front of everyone, Malik handed her an official promotion letter. She would now serve as National Beverage Creative Director. The letter included a fair salary and full legal ownership of her own recipe. Aaliyah's hands shook as she read the words twice, then covered her mouth. Tears rolled freely down her face, but this time from joy. "Your notebook will always belong to you," Malik told her gently. "Nobody will ever take credit for your work again." Aaliyah hugged the letter tightly against her chest, unable to speak. The other baristas gathered around her, clapping and cheering warmly. Someone handed her a fresh cup of her own smoked vanilla macchiato. She laughed through her tears, finally safe in her own kitchen. Malik then announced a new company-wide policy for every single store. All 28 locations would switch to an automatic digital tip system. No manager would ever again control another person's hard-earned money. Every tip would now flow straight from the register to each employee's account. No cash box, no manual counting, no room for quiet theft. Sarah promised the new system would launch within 31 days. The staff cheered again, louder this time, some hugging each other tightly. A young barista near the door wiped tears from her cheeks quietly. For the first time in months, the whole store felt light. That evening, Malik came home to his quiet, warm house near the water. The smell of grilled salmon drifted faintly from his neighbor's yard next door. He sat down on the living room floor next to Ruby. He opened a small paper box holding one fresh chocolate cookie. This cookie came straight from his own store, baked that same afternoon. He handed it to Ruby and watched her take one careful bite. Her whole face lit up with a bright, easy smile. Watching his daughter smile like that, Malik finally let his shoulders relax completely. He understood something simple, something worth every single hard day behind him. The warmest cup of coffee was never about the beans. Ruby crawled into his lap, resting her head against his chest. She still held her worn cloth doll tight in one small hand. Malik wrapped his arms around her and closed his eyes. Outside, rain had finally stopped falling over Seattle. A soft breeze moved through the open window, carrying the smell of the sea. The house felt quiet, warm, and completely safe. Malik thought about Marcus, sitting alone in his small house near Pike Place. Tomorrow, he decided he would bring Ruby to visit him properly. Some debts could never be repaid with money alone. It was always about the respect poured into every single cup. Somewhere across the city, 27 other stores were closing up for the night. 28 counters, 28 promises, finally kept whole again. Malik carried Ruby to bed and pulled the blanket over her shoulders. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe slowly. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together.